So increasing happiness, reducing harm, increasing and reducing unnecessary harm. Okay, so why is that the standard? You picked it. Why is that the right one?
To me, morality mostly, but not exclusively, revolves around maximizing happiness and minimizing harm, because those are the things that motivate my conscience. There's probably an evolutionary, sociological, and/or psychological explanation for why my conscience reacts to those things in the way it does, but I don't know that there is any ultimate cosmic justification for those reactions. Apologists see this as a problem, but I don't. I'm going to do what my conscience tells me, whether there is any further justification for it or not. The existence or non-existence of some cosmic moral justifier is irrelevant.
If morality to do, and this will never happen, of course, but I could go into your house with a gun and say, hey, look, I want your painting on the wall with nothing behind it, but I want your painting. You say, no. And I say, well, I don't care what you want, because my morality is what I want. I'm deciding what it is, bang, I take it and I go. You could complain, but you don't have any moral objective standard by which you could say I'm right or wrong.
It's true that without an objective standard of morality, I can't say that my moral intuitions are objectively superior to anyone else's, but I don't really see why that matters. If someone is about to do harm to someone else, we don't call philosophers and theologians so they can argue with this person about the objective moral status of their actions. We call police with guns.
It's not there. There's a difference between believing the truth and falsehood of certain propositions and
No.
certain prescriptions. You're conflating the two.
No. You said if you believed everything I do. If you believe everything I do, you wouldn't be doing that.
Well, give me something that you believe that would stop me from doing it.
God says it's wrong.
I totally believe that, and I don't care.
Well,
you see, Matt. You asked me.
But that's inconsistency.
Here's what I'm getting at.
You're offering me an inconsistency.
Here, a big part of your argument, Matt, is that you can't justify telling someone that they can't do this. You can't justify.
No, wait. You said I'm tied up. If you have the same worldview I do, then you wouldn't be doing that.
That's not necessarily true.
Okay.
If someone is behaving in a way we cannot tolerate, but their actions are perfectly consistent with what they care about, then I don't think a moral argument will be an effective way to change their behavior. Even if you can convince a person that God exists and will send you to hell if you disobey him, if a person doesn't care about these things or value them, pointing them out won't change their behavior. If a person's value system is different from mine and that value system is leading them to carry out actions that I cannot tolerate, I'm not going to try to argue that my value system is objectively superior. I'm simply going to try to stop them. Beliefs certainly influence values, but they don't absolutely determine values in the way Matt Slick thinks they do. There are certain acts that I cannot tolerate. I can't tolerate them if there is an objective moral standard backing up that intolerance, and I still can't tolerate them even if there is no objective moral standard backing up my intolerance. I can't even tolerate them if there is an objective moral standard that is contrary to my intolerance of those actions. Since that's the case, the objectivity or subjectivity of morality is really not relevant to me. I do believe that I cannot objectively justify what my conscience tells me, but given that the presence or absence of objective justification would not change my motivations or behavior, I really don't see why that matters. If there is an objective moral standard that says murder is wrong, I'm going to oppose murder. If there is no objective moral standard that says murder is wrong, I'm still going to oppose murder. If there is an objective moral standard that says murder is right and we ought to allow it, guess what? I'm still going to oppose murder.
That you should behave in a manner consistent with God's nature.
Why should I behave in a manner consistent with God's nature?
Because that's the right thing to do by definition.
Why should I do the right thing to do?
You mean you don't know that you should do what's right?
No, I'm asking a philosophical question. Why ought I do what is defined as right?
Because that's what's right by definition. That's why you ought to do it, because that's what is right. If it's right, it's what ought to be followed. If you ask why ought you follow that which is right, you're saying why I ought to do that which I ought to do.
Okay, in this bit, Matt's clearly not answering the question. Scott asked why one should act in a way that's consistent with God's nature, and Matt answered that it's the right thing to do. But since Matt thinks that what you ought to do and the right thing to do mean the same thing, then asserting that you ought to do something because it's right is a meaningless tautology. It's no different from saying you ought to do X because X is what you ought to do. It doesn't explain a damn thing.
Well, if what you mean by right is by definition that which ought to be followed, then I totally dispute your claim that God's commands are what's right. Because you haven't given me a reason, Matt, for thinking that God's commands are what I ought to do.
Because he's revealed them to you, because he is the creator. He owns the universe. He owns the stars. He's the creator of you. And he has the right to declare to you how you ought to be.
I hear this a lot. Apologists will often say that you should do what God commands because he created you and the universe in which you live, therefore he owns you and has the right to give you orders. I have absolutely no idea how this follows logically.
Facts. You're not able to derive prescriptions from these facts. You're just making descriptions.
I just said prescription. I said the oughts. It's a deontological issue. Because in your worldview, you cannot bridge the gap between is and ought. You might have a statement, but you can't get the ought bridged out of it in an arbitrary atheistic system. We can as Christians.
No, you can't.
Yes, we can.
How can you derive an ought from give me any is in Christianity, any description, and I would love to see you try to get a prescription from that. Go ahead.
Don't lie. That's the same thing. The prescription and the description are the same thing.
How the fuck could a statement in the imperative mood like "don't lie" be a description? That makes no fucking sense. The description and the prescription are not the same thing in any scenario, and the existence of God does not change that.